So today we're making some green spinach brioche hamburger buns, and we're using natural colouring from the spinach to give these buns a beautiful green hue. So the first thing that you're going to want to do, as always, is prepare everything. So do all your mise en place. And we're going to start off with creating our green colouring for our brioche, and it's super easy. I'm using spinach here. You can use fresh or frozen. I'm using frozen today. And just in your blender, you want to combine that with your water. And we're going to blend this up until it's nice and smooth. Now, one of the problems with using natural food colouring, or in this case using vegetables to colour our different baked goods, is when they're exposed to heat in the oven, they do tend to lose a lot of their colour. But I'm going to share with you a secret that a lot of bakers use to keep the colour of their breads and baked goods, and also help to extend the life of the product, and that is vitamin C powder. So vitamin C powder, it's also known in the industry as ascorbic acid. It's essentially just pure vitamin C. So you can essentially buy this at any pharmacy or grocery store or online and use this in your bread recipes to keep the color and again extend the shelf life of the product. So I'm going to pop this in with my spinach as well and give another blend just to make sure that the spinach is really nice and smooth. Okay, so that's looking a beautiful green colour. And to that we're going to add some of our other ingredients. So traditionally a brioche would contain eggs, but today we're making a plant-based variety. So we are using the panisang egg replacement, and I've measured that out now. I'm just going to add that to my spinach to hydrate. So the panis egg replaces all 8 functions of eggs, so it's a great replacement in this recipe for our whole egg. And I've just popped that in there now. We are using some invert syrup, so I'm using a trimoline today. This is one that I made, and it's super easy to make. It's just sugar, citric acid, and water, or you can use your favorite liquid sweetener. That's again going to help with our texture, keeping it nice and moist, and extend the shelf life of our buns so you don't have to make your hamburger buns every day. And sugar. All right, we're going to give this another blend. Now we're going to add our nice green smoothie into a stand mixer bowl. You can do this by hand, but it's much easier if you're using your machine. And just make sure that you get all of that liquid in. And to that we're going to be adding now our yeast. Now you can use a fresh yeast or a fast-acting yeast. I'm using the fast-acting dry yeast. And we just want to sprinkle that in. So of course that's going to help our bread rise and leaven. We also have some plant milk, and I'm using soy milk today, but you can use any type of milk. And I always like to use the unsweetened variety. I do find sometimes the sweetened variety of the plant milks, they sometimes put vanilla in them. So it's always a good idea just to get the unsweetened variety. And we have our bread flour, also known as strong flour. So this is the flour which has a high protein content. And the higher protein content that you will find in your bread is going to give you bread that's going to have a lot of volume and a slight chew as well. So that's our bread flour or strong flour. Now we can get this on our stand mixer with our hook attachment. Now on a slow speed, we're going to start mixing everything together. Once your dough starts coming together, we're going to turn up our speed to speed 2 and knead until we have 75% gluten development, or until we can just do a window test. So we're going to start developing our gluten now. I can see that my dough is starting to come away from the bottom of the bowl. So we're going to check it now for its gluten development, window test. So I've just got some water here. I'm just going to spray that on my hands so they're nice and wet. And we're going to pull up our dough and see whether we can create a window without it breaking right away, which I can, if you can see. It's a little bit of a sticky dough. All right, so now we are going to add our salt. And we'll get this back on our mixer. Okay, so now we're going to get this back on a low speed. We just want to mix this all up. Now the reason in some bread recipes it will ask you to add the salt at a later stage, it just gives our dough an opportunity to really absorb up all of that moisture without any interference. So now we're going to be slowly adding our vegan margarine. Now I am using a firm variety of margarine. And this one I get from Violife, but you can find lots of different brands about. And it is very similar to traditional butter, that it has a higher fat content. We're just going to add a little bit at a time. So adding fat to dough is going to add moisture to our bread and give it a nice soft texture. So I've added all my margarine. Now this is optional if you would like to add some butter aroma, and I will link in your unique ingredients list where I find this, and it gives it a beautiful buttery flavor without having to use butter. So now that I can see that most of my margarine has been incorporated, I'm just going to put the speed back up and just until everything starts coming together and we have a nice homogeneous dough. So while that's mixing, I'm just going to grab myself a container and we're just going to grease it with a little bit of oil. So we just want to continue mixing until it starts coming away from the sides again like it did previously. So I can see now that the dough is starting to lift up from the bottom, so it is ready to put into our container. So what I like to do now is I'm just going to flip this over because I like to have a little bit of oil on the top as well, and we're just going to tuck the dough underneath itself so we have a nice smooth surface. And I'm just going to press down into the corners so we have a nice level dough. Now we're going to do our first proof now. So we're waiting for our yeast to ferment and we get a lot of puff from our dough. So this can take anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. It's just really dependent on the temperature of your room. So what I like to do, because it's in this container, is just mark the level of where it currently is. And we can just pop that aside in a nice warm space, something between 25 and 30 degrees Celsius, and wait until it's doubled in size. So we can use that as a guide. So once it gets the same up here, like up to here, then we know that it will be ready. So now we can set that aside for our first proof, also known as our bulk fermentation. So our green spinach buns have been proofing our bulk fermentation and they have doubled in size. So we can start scaling our dough now. So I'm just going to put a little bit of oil down on my bench, just so that the dough won't stick. Now I like to punch down my dough, just knock out some of that air. If it's a little bit sticky, you can put a bit of water on your hand. Okay, and onto the bench. So to scale our dough, we are using the classic hamburger brioche size, and I'm actually going to be using this form as well, which is like a silicone form, which is optional. You can put it in to help them to become that perfect shape. So for our classic hamburger bun, so the traditional size, we're going to be scaling 100 grams. So now that we have our sizes all scaled out, we can form them into a ball. So just press down with your fingertips, and then we're going to take all of those corners, bring them into the center, flip it over, and then roll it into a nice tight ball. Now I'm using a hamburger silicone form. You can just put this on a tray with some baking paper, that's totally fine. But I do love these forms that you can buy online, and it will help the bread as it is doing its final proof to get into that perfect size for our hamburgers. So I'm just going to pop that in the middle of each one, and then we can just continue on with our other pieces. So I'm just going to set these ones aside just for 10 minutes, just for them to rest. We've just covered those. So now we can work on our slider size, or the smaller or mini hamburger buns. And those ones are going to be 33 grams each. And because these are so small, I like to just do like 2 at a time. And onto our tray. They're getting slightly sticky, just grab a little bit of flour and shake off the excess. And I'm just going to put a tea towel over the top of these ones as well, and just set them aside for 10 minutes just to relax a little bit before we press them down. So it's been about 10 minutes and our dough balls have had a little bit of time just to relax. So we're just going to press them down a little bit just to give our hamburger buns that signature shape. Okay. And we're going to brush them with a little bit of plant milk, and you can use whichever one that you like. And the same for our small buns. Okay, now we're going to set those aside until they almost double in size before we put them in the oven to bake. So our spinach hamburger buns have proofed. And I'm going to put another coat of our plant milk over the top. And if you want to put some seeds on at this stage, you can. I'm using some Nigella seeds today, which have a lovely kind of toasted onion sort of flavour. And it's a great contrast with the green too.